Good morning and welcome to worship from the Old Ship Meeting House. It's a rainy and cool day here in Hingham on May 30th. Those of you who are elsewhere, I hope you've got warm and sun. In any case, welcome to everyone. We begin as we do each week with a chime and then with our prelude offered by Christopher from our Old Ship organ. We begin. Thank you, Christopher. Prelude by F.W. Zachow. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. On this Memorial Day, Sunday, we gather for worship as we do each Sunday. We gather with prayers for peace in our hearts as we do this day and each Sunday. We gather for peace in our land, for peace in the world. Even as we remember with grateful heart those who have served and sacrificed in times of war with honor and with courage. Yes, we gather for worship as we do each week. We gather holding before ourselves things of worth, values of worth, compassion, kindness, truth, justice, freedom, equality, that of God within each of us and among all of us. We have gathered once again, and it is good. Our introit, Open My Heart by Henry Fleury.
Open my heart to all that I seek, let me be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek, let me be part of the love you give. Let me be part of the love you give. Let me be part of the love you give.
Offering chalice lighting words this morning is Diane Jordan. Thanks very much, Diane, for being our chalice lighter this morning.
Thank you, Ken. I'll try to be brief about this for this Memorial Day weekend. My grandparents on both sides immigrated from Italy just before 1920. My grandmother on my mother's side and grandfather had 6 children, 4 girls, 2 boys. Both boys were drafted to World War II. The youngest was 18. Within a year, he was killed in action, and they never recovered his body. My grandmother and grandfather were awarded a sum of money for that. And with that money, they bought lots of land for the rest of their children to build homes. So where I grew up, the street was named after him. And there is a square in his hometown named after, dedicated to him. So for his service and for all the others that have served, I am eternally grateful to an uncle that I never met that gave me the life that I have. And I'm sure my grandparents would have loved to have him around a lot longer. So in that spirit, I light this chalice. May someday we not have to do this anymore.
Thank you, Diane. With that beautiful story of remembrance and gratitude, and with the hope for peace, we light the flaming chalice of our faith. In the spirit of those beautiful words from Diane, in the spirit of all the stories and the people we hold in our hearts, song we often sing on this Memorial Day, one that you all know. There are slightly different versions. You will hear the version I'm singing and you'll join in, I'm sure, if the spirit moves. Where Have All the Flowers Gone by Pete Seeger and Joe Hickerson. It's outdated in some ways when it comes to gender roles and identities, what men and women can do and who we are. That's a sign of some progress. Sadly, it's not outdated when it comes to our continued hopes for peace and continued wars being fought in various places around the world. So we have to keep singing and living and working for peace. Join in as the spirit moves. Oh, where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them, everyone. When will they learn? When will they learn? Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? Come to young men, everyone. When will they learn? When will they learn? Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? They've gone for soldiers, everyone. When will they learn? When will they learn? Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? They've gone Good morning again, and a warm welcome on this chilly day in Hingham, as I've mentioned. A warm welcome to worship from our Old Ship Meeting House to you wherever you are in Hingham or far away across our nation, across the Commonwealth. Welcome. Old timers, always welcome. Newcomers, always welcome. And if you are new, we would invite you to explore on our website, oldshipchurch.org, to get to know us a little better, just as we would look forward to getting to know you. Fellowship hour follows the service immediately on this same link. So if you'd like to engage in some conversation with other people in our congregation, then please just stay on the link at the end of the service. No additional announcements this morning, except I would like to draw attention to these flowers, these beautiful peonies given by Jeff and Cindy Nussdorfer from their own garden, their Michigan garden, in celebration of spring. And it is a beautiful celebration indeed. Thank you, Jeff and Cindy. Our time for all ages will be offered, as most weeks, by Chloe Bridet, our interim Director of Religious Education. Chloe.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're staying warm. I have a sweater and a turtleneck and a blanket on my lap. So I hope everyone else is staying warm too. I have a story this morning. We were talking in our little kids class this morning about the difference between biographies and autobiographies. Which was just a really cute thing that one of the girls brought up. And I wanted to give you guys a little biography that I learned while listening to a podcast. And podcasts are radio shows you can listen to on your computer or your phone. And so the podcast recounted the story of Eugene Bullard, the first Black American military pilot. So born in 1895 in a 3-room house in Columbia, Georgia, Eugene was the son of a former slave. His father grew up emphasizing a message of Black dignity, being proud of being Black. Eugene, even though things were really hard for Black folks in the South, learned to read, and at the age of 11, ran away from home. Eugene ran away seeking adventure, but also to sort of escape the bad things that were happening in the South at that time. After working in different parts of Georgia for 5 years, Eugene decided to venture to Europe. He stowed away on a German vessel bound for Aberdeen, Scotland. He basically hid on the ship to get a free ride to Europe, if you can imagine that, in his teenage years. He had heard that segregation and discrimination did not exist in the exact same way there, and so he thought he might have some more opportunities as a Black man in Europe. Eugene made a living as a boxer for a couple of years, so you can see him here in his different roles, and eventually ended up in Paris. When World War I began in 1914, he joined the French infantry, presumably to protect his new home. Wounded badly, Eugene went back to Paris and wound up betting a friend that he could join the French flying service despite his color. He bet $2,000. So $2,000 in those times, he bet that he could become a military pilot. Eugene, true to his words, was granted his wings a couple years later in 1917 and flew for the French during that year. When he attempted to join the American Air Force upon their entrance into World War I, he was rejected. They claimed that they did not allow enlisted men to become pilots. Those scholars now agree it was because of the color of his skin. Eugene finished out World War I in the infantry and remained in France until after the war. After gaining his wings, Eugene Bullard was not finished. He worked in the entertainment business and owned a successful nightclub in Montmartre, a district of Paris. During this time, he rubbed elbows with the likes of really famous people like Langston Hughes, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Josephine Baker. When World War II started, he again joined the infantry and fought valiantly. And after being wounded, he made his way again back to the United States. While living in France, Eugene was really known as a war hero. People knew about him, and he had a reputation for his skill in the air. He took down at least one German plane and flew over 20 missions during his service. Upon returning to the United States, he sort of became an unknown person. Using the money from the sale of his nightclub after World War II, he bought an apartment in Harlem and finished out his life working as a security guard and a longshoreman in New York City. Eugene was also really active in the civil rights movement, actually, in the 1950s and 60s. So when he died in 1961, he was the recipient of all these awards for his service from the French government. He was even buried with honors in the French War Veterans section of the Flushing Cemetery in Queens, New York. To this day, his grave is kept up by the Federation of French War Veterans. And so you can see it here with a little plane next to it. And it took us in the United States until 1994 to fully recognize Eugene's service during the war, 33 years after his death. And then it even took even longer, 2019, for them to put up a statue of Eugene. So it was really sad that us in America, because of sort of the racism that we have in our country, were unable to see Eugene for the hero that he was during the wars, and that the French did see that. So I want to remind us on this Monday, tomorrow, that Memorial Day, that this is a reminder that we should remember everyone, not just the people we see in movies and in books, but also the hidden heroes that might have been erased by history, like Eugene. So let us keep remembering him and his service in France and here and everywhere.
Well, thank you, Chloe. What an extraordinary story. I had not heard of Eugene Bullard until you brought this up this week, and I imagine too many of us have not. Extraordinary story, much sadness and tragedy, but extraordinary heroism and courage. Thank you. And thank you, Chloe, for your stories all year long and still for the next few weeks. But as some of you may have seen, and this leads to the first candle for our candles of joy, sorrow, and concern. And some of you may have read in our email yesterday, the Sunday reminders. Chloe will be leaving us as of the end of June. We knew she was interim. We were kind of hoping for 2 years, but we knew 1 year was the contract. And it turns out she has been asked to serve another congregation as their minister. This is her chosen career path. So we are very happy for Chloe, and we'll wish her the very best when she makes that transition from here to her next place of service. And at the same time, we are so grateful for all that she's given us this year in her dual roles as interim director of religious education and as our interim administrator as well, with grace, skill, wit, and warmth. Thank you, Chloe. The first candle will be for you. The other candle, in addition to whatever you all name in chat, a joy or sorrow or concern, going to light a candle of sympathy for longtime Old Ship member Jim Robinson. Jim's son, Russell, died this past week at the age of 58 after a very long journey with cancer. We extend our sympathy to Jim, to Jim's other 2 sons, Alan and David, and all the family and friends. Service will be held in a couple of weeks. Not here, but we will alert you all in the congregation in one of our emails. Candle of sympathy for Jim and his family. And all the other candles for anything that you print in chat, and joys and sorrows and concerns that we hold in our hearts, though they remain unspoken or unwritten among us this morning. May we gather our hearts and minds in the spirit of meditation, prayer, and then shared silence. Let us pause long enough to discover, uncover, recover peace in our hearts, in our often too busy minds. No hurry, just waiting long enough. As our mind slows, our heart calms, revealing at least a measure of greater peace, calm, beneath whatever roils the surface. Peace. And from this place of peace, we pray, from the God of our hearts to the God beyond names, one God. We pray for peace on this Memorial Day weekend, peace among all peoples and nations, peace in our cities and towns and countryside, peace with justice, which is the only real peace. On this Memorial Day, may there be peace for all, everywhere, in whatever circumstance, true peace. Peace for those in the midst of war or other forms of violence. Peace for those who grieve with heavy hearts. Peace for those who are ill or who suffer for whatever reason. May we all know peace. As our meditations and prayers continue in shared silence. You all can probably not hear it, but in our silence and in whatever pause, I hear the rain on the roof of our old meeting house. For me, I mean, I've talked about what a cold and chilly day it is, but rain on a roof, when you're fortunate enough to be indoors and safe and warm, is one of the most peaceful sounds that I know. I send that peace to you. As we hear our anthem from Christopher, titled Rise by Ariana Abella. Christopher.
I will rise with all my mothers, I will
Beautiful, Christopher. Thank you so much. Thank you. We have one reading this morning, came to me from Corey Fitzmarquez. He read it at one of our Committee on Ministry meetings. So we're grateful to Corey for bringing this to our attention. Our reader this morning is David Nelson. And thank you, David, for sharing the reading.
Thank you, Ken. Our reading this morning is from Litany of Contradictory Things by the Jesuit priest Michael Marnahan. Wheat and weeds, let them grow together. Israelis and Palestinians, let them grow together. Catholics and Protestants of Northern Ireland, let them grow together. Sikhs and Hindus and Muslims of India, let them grow together. Russians and Americans, let them grow together. Blacks and whites of our nation, let them grow together. Revolutionaries and reactionaries, let them grow together. Republicans and Democrats, let them grow together. Rich and poor, humble and haughty, let them grow together. Joys and sorrows, laughter, tears, let them grow together. Strength and weakness, let them grow together. Doubt and faith, let them grow together. Virtue and vice, let them grow together. The helpful and the helpless, let them grow together. All the contrarieties, let them grow together. Here ends the reading.
Thank you, David, and beautifully read. We come to our time of offering. As just about every week, we have the opportunity to make a gift to the ongoing various ministries of our congregation. And we also have the opportunity to make a gift to this month's special outreach offering, which, as we've been reminding everyone each week, is to the Hingham Unity Council, creating programs addressing issues of racism, racial diversity, equity, inclusion, socioeconomic diversity, and so on. Important programs, and they're doing good work. We invite your special gifts to Hingham Unity Council, your ongoing gifts to our ongoing ministries. You can find the way to do this by just clicking on the donate link on our website, oldshipchurch.org. Thank you in advance for your generosity. Our offertory, Meditation on Breathing by Sarah Dan Jones.
Breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out loud. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in When I breathe in, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Thank you to the many Christophers. Thank you, Christopher. Beautiful. I expect we are all feeling a little more peaceful with that. Today, as it happens, I learned this morning, is the anniversary of the dedication of the Lincoln Memorial. I think it was 99 years ago in Washington, D.C. We begin with words from Lincoln's first inaugural address to begin my Memorial Day ruminations or reflections. Lincoln said, "The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature." Such a deeply poignant sentence from Lincoln, spoken in March of 1861, poignant for many reasons, universal reasons, but also because we know, as Lincoln did not, how long the Civil War would grind on and how many deaths beyond anything Lincoln could have imagined would come in the midst of that war. Poignant too, because we know or should know, has too little been taught in our schools, that during the Civil War, there was the opportunity, if you will, for the war in the West against Native nations, Apache, Navajo, and others, to continue with more fury than ever. Additionally poignant for us in 2021, not only because there are still wars being fought around the world, we still have service women and men stationed around the world, and also because these days it may feel as though we are further away from a chorus of union, Lincoln's words, than ever, and that fewer than ever, it may feel, fewer than ever are hearing, and not to mention touched by or heeding the better angels of our nature. All this said, what a powerfully resonant phrase. I have preached about it before, the mystic chords of memory, suggesting as it does that there are deeper harmonies, mystic harmonies beneath whatever roils on the surface of our lives, just our busy minds, but roils in the headlines, in the debates of Congress, on social media, on battlefields. There are deeper harmonies. It's not that there aren't genuinely substantive differences among us and between us, whether as Americans or as human beings, wherever we are. The question has to do with how do we understand those differences? What are we going to do about those differences? How might we resolve some or many of those differences? That's the question. Most importantly, then, are we able to discern or create harmony out of difference and diversity, not necessarily eliminating, which we couldn't do, difference and diversity, but finding some harmony. See and feel the deeper harmonies, the mystic chords of memory, remembering, if you will, who we truly are as human beings, remembering, putting ourselves back together, remembering how we are put together. The reading we heard earlier prayerfully invites us to this sort of seeing and feeling and experience, this remembering, this possibility. It's based on a parable, one of Jesus's parables in the Gospel of Matthew. Some of you may have heard those echoes, summarizing and simplifying the parable. A farmer, the master of the house, if you will, has sowed or had his servants sow wheat, seeds of wheat on his land. And a while later, his servants discover that in the middle of the night, others have come. Sometimes the word is used as enemies, translated in the text. Others have come and sowed seeds of tares, weeds, troublesome weeds in the same field. What should they do? They wonder. Should they pull out the weeds, the tares? They ask. No, they are told. Wait until the harvest. Then, because if you pull them out now, you might be pulling out the wheat too before it's grown to its fullness. Wait till the harvest. Pull everything out. Then separate the wheat from the tares and burn the tares, burn the weeds. Now, the ordinary interpretation derives from what may or may not be a secondary source in the gospel, which immediately follows the parable and emphasizes a point that Jesus perhaps was implying, saying that the weeds represent the evil ones, the sinners. When the harvest time comes, they will be separated from the good ones, the saints, the pure, and the evil ones will be burned. Or if we choose, we can lean more in the direction of the interpretation implied in the reading by Michael Moynihan, a Jesuit priest, as it happens. Let the contraries grow together without judging ourselves, good and evil, saved and damned. The implication being, it seems to me, that the contraries grow better that way. How about that? It's not that there aren't moral distinctions that ought to be made sometimes, maybe more than sometimes, but maybe we shouldn't be making such distinctions as quickly as we too often do. You know, oh, those people, you know how they are. Those Republicans, or those Democrats, or those Israelis, or those Palestinians, and on it goes. Rather, instead of leaping to judgment, maybe we should listen again to Lincoln, who assumed that there are better angels of our nature, the deeper mystic chords, if we take the time to listen more carefully, listen carefully enough, deep mystic chords that harmonize apparent opposites. It's like the Tao, the yin and the yang, and there's a little piece of yin within the yang and yang within the yin. Little piece of me and you, even for our differences, little piece of you in me, maybe more than a little, if we listen carefully to the mystic chords harmonizing apparent opposites, contraries. Maybe it turns out we even need each other in spite of what sometimes look to be quite dramatic differences of opinion, differences in the kind of person we are, our background, and so on. Maybe we need one another, complement one another. We can be talking about, as in the reading, more than in the original parable, the contrary. We can talk about the contrary feelings that we have in our own lives. Every week we light candles of joy and sorrow. We each know them both, sometimes both at the same time. And indeed, one of the Thanksgiving hymns that we sing each year right here, "Come, ye thankful people," affirms as much, drawing from the same gospel parable. Remember the line in the hymn, "Come, ye thankful people, wheat and tares together sown, here for joy and sorrow grown." Joy and sorrow woven together. It is right, it should be so, poet Blake wrote. It's the nature of things. As much as we might resist the truth and want only joy and never sorrow. As the poet Khalil Gibran put it in The Prophet, the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Don't we all know this? A broken heart is an open heart. It's open to everything. We feel that vulnerability when we're in the midst of sorrow. And paradoxical as it might feel and seem and look, we're open to more joy at the same time. Well, all these reflections bring me back to Memorial Day. I don't feel as though I've ever left Memorial Day behind as I reflect here. Memorial Day was, as I expect you all know, originally called Decoration Day. Later in the 19th century, as people decorated the graves of Civil War veterans, those who had lost their lives in the war, decorated with flowers. But after World War I, it became a day in our nation to recognize and remember all those who'd given their lives, sacrificed their lives in all of our too many wars, to mourn with sorrowful hearts. Even as with all grief, we most often also feel some measure of joy with gratitude, with our gratitude for all that those who have gone before have given to us. I'm grateful in the context of those who served in the wars, grateful for the peace that they helped to make possible, so we always hope. For me, you see, and I expect for many others, and Diane Jordan alluded to this in her chalice lighting. Thank you, Diane. Again, Memorial Day for me goes beyond remembrance for those who've lost their lives in war and includes a hope and a prayer for a future Memorial Day on which no one then living will have living memory of war. No one then living will have experienced the death of a dear one in war, because war will have become a thing of memory only, a phenomenon long past. Not that we humans wouldn't still have disagreements. It comes with the package of being human, disagreements and differences, but perhaps a day will have come when it will simply be unthinkable to resort to war to try to resolve those disagreements. Instead, let us grow together will be the lesson we will have learned. That's my hope and prayer for someday. That same spirit I've shared before, a story somewhat similar to the story Diane shared, this of my Uncle Bob, who wrote a letter home not long before he was sent overseas as a paratrooper and then killed in the Battle of the Bulge. And in this letter, he reflected on how well his comrades in arms in the barracks were getting along with all their differences of faith, differences that now may seem like the least of differences to most of us, Jewish and Christian and Jewish and Catholic and Protestant. But for him, this was something new, all getting along so well in spite of their faith. He thought this led him to think perhaps someday he would go into the ministry, the Presbyterian ministry, the faith of his upraising, and preach this message, bring this message throughout his life. Well, he was not able to do that. Having lost his life in the war, I guess I've taken up some of that cause. The same uncle who, of course, along with all those who lost their lives in the Second War and in the Korean War, who never heard, and in wars previous, never heard "Where Have All the Flowers Gone," which we sang earlier. I want to say another word about the song, the origins of the song. Some of you may know this. It's relevant to this morning's theme. The words of this song, which may seem to most of us as the quintessentially American peace song, the words came to Pete Seeger when he was on his way to a gig, to a college, maybe it was to Oberlin. In any case, they were inspired. He was reading this Russian novel. American Peace Song came from a Russian novel. Pete got the words from a few verses of a Ukrainian folk song that was quoted in the novel, "And Quiet Flows the Dawn." by Mikhail Sholokhov, who won the Nobel Prize not long before. Quintessentially American peace song with words from a Russian novel. Americans and Russians, let us grow together. I want to draw towards a conclusion with an additional thought. I'm not a farmer, not even a gardener particularly, but I've heard this much about farming, that monoculture is often not a good idea. Well, I don't know all the scientific reasons for that, but apparently it's true. Indigenous peoples knew and know this well. In a chapter in the book, Braiding Sweetgrass, I've quoted from that book earlier this year by Robin Wall Kimmerer, she talks about the three sisters, as they're traditionally known, corn and beans and squash, that are planted together and that thrive better together than if they were planted separately. Now, Kimmerer is not only a member of the Potawatomi Nation, but she's a botanist, and she goes in the book, goes into great and beautiful detail as to why this is so, why they each help one another in a way. But interesting as the detail is, and you can get the book and look it up, it's beautiful just knowing this, isn't it? Corn, beans, and squash, let them grow together, because in fact, they grow better together. Isn't the same thing true of us human beings? Don't we grow better together, learning from one another, particularly from those who are very different from us, maybe sometimes even, or especially learn from our so-called enemies if we would stop and listen to those mystic chords, listen to our better angels. There are groups right now who ordinarily are thought of as enemies or certainly opponents who not only believe this, but are doing something about it. There are Republicans and Democratic senators working together, sitting together to work on a bipartisan infrastructure bill. Others, senators working together on a bipartisan police reform bill. In another part of the world, for years, for decades, there have been those meeting together in Palestine, Israel, of all the varied faiths of that part of the world, meeting together, sharing together, growing together. Israelis and Palestinians, let them grow together. Jews and Muslims and Christians, let them grow together. Let us all grow together on this Memorial Day, and always heeding the call of those mystic calls of harmony, mystic chords of memory, heeding the better angels, remembering who we are, human beings, most truly, and who we most truly seek to fully be. So may it be. Blessed be. Amen. Candles of joy and sorrow, flame of our faith extinguished, and not the joys, not the sorrows that we carry with love, not the faith that we carry into our lives. That will always be so. We sing again together. Our hymn is number 168. If you have a gray hardback hymn book, One More Step. Perhaps you downloaded the hymn. The words are fairly simple. You may catch on. One More Step, number 168. One more word. one step at a time is all we can take. One step at a time. May each step be a step of compassion, of kindness, of love. Each step, with each turn of our wheel, with each movement forward, bringing the blessings of our lives to others, making of our lives a blessing. So may it be, and blessed be. Amen.
Alleluia, 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 alleluia,
I think you were having fun, Christopher. And we all were. Thank you. Thank you yet again, Christopher. Go in peace, be peace, bring peace wherever we go.